Yo, what's good, buddy? Welcome back to another video. And so today we're gonna talk about the top 10 college football teams in the last 20 years. It inspired me because last night's Alabama-Clemson game, talking about how Clemson might be one of the best college football teams of all time, which I disagree as of right now, but they could be. But maybe I'm just depending on all the players that come out of that team and their history in the NFL. But yeah, it's another discussion for another day. But let's get in with this list. At number 10, we got 1999 Florida State. This team, a year after a loss to Tennessee in the national championship game, the Seminoles started out ranked number 1 in the preseason with a veteran quarterback in Chris Weinke, a star-studded group of receivers led by Peter Warwick, a strong defense that featured Corey Simon, Chris Hope, and Derek Gibson, and one of the greatest kickers in college history, my boy Sebastian Janikowski, longtime Raider. But the season wasn't pretty. Although they were winning, but midway through the season, adversity hit. Warwick was suspended, and fellow receiver Laveranues, I don't know how to say it, Coles was dismissed after they got heavily discounted clothes at a department store. Warwick was suspended 2 games, ending his Heisman hopes. But, as I said, Florida State kept winning, earning a spot in the national title game to play Michael Vick and Virginia Tech. Seminoles' fast and aggressive defense penned Vick in, and Florida State won 46-29. And this team had 4 consensus All-Americans, 8 All-ACC first-team selections, and 31 players who will go on to play in the NFL. All right, next, number 9. 2009, Alabama. Saban's first national championship team at Alabama remains the only one under Saban to go through a season unbeaten. Crimson Tide beat 4 top 20 teams away from home, but no one was any sweeter than a 32-13 win over number 1 Florida and Tebow in the SEC championship. The year before, the Gators and Tebow had ended Alabama's 12-game winning streak by knocking off number 1 ranked Crimson Tide 31-20 in the SEC championship. So they both got each other the year after that, so it evened out. But Alabama held 7 of its opponents that season to 10 or fewer points, thanks to a defense that finished second nationally in scoring. And sophomore running back Mark Ingram became the first Alabama player to win the Heisman Trophy. Crimson Tide capped their first national championship in 17 years with a 37-21 victory over Texas in the BCS national championship at the Rose Bowl. But no play was bigger than the season than Terrence Cody's block of a Tennessee field goal attempt as time expired to preserve a 12-10 win over the Vols. Also, I like to say, this isn't my list. This is a list according to ESPN.com. So I was gonna make my own list, but I have to do a lot of research. And I like to do the last 20 years because I looked at the all-time list, and all the teams like the 40s, the 50s, the 30s, and it was different era of football, different era in football. So I want to talk about like the most recent ones and the guys you would mostly remember. So, all right. So at number 8, we got 2015 Alabama. Coming off a bitter loss to Ohio State the year before in college football playoff semifinals. I want to say that was they played Ezekiel Elliott when he went off, I think. But they stumbled again the third week of the 2015 season in a home loss to number 15 Ole Miss, which scored 24 points off 5 Alabama turnovers. But after that, the Crimson Tide did from there was win 12 straight wins, beating 7 nationally ranked teams along the way to win Saban's 4th national championship at Alabama. Junior running back Derrick Henry rushed for 2,219 yards and 28 touchdowns on his way to winning the Heisman Trophy in what was the Lane Kiffin's second season of calling the Tide's offensive plays. Alabama had led to hold off Clemson and Deshaun Watson for a thrilling 45-40 victory in the national title game. Saban called for an onside kick in the 4th quarter of the game, and kicker Adam Griffith, he did it perfectly. I remember this. It was crazy, but it led to a touchdown that put the Tide up for good. All right, number 7, 2012 Alabama. You're going to see a lot of Alabama on this list, but Alabama won its 3rd national championship in 4 years since 2012 and became the first team to repeat as undisputed national champion since Nebraska in 94 and 95. Of Nick Saban's 5 national championship teams in Alabama, the 2012 club might have been the most balanced on both sides of the ball. The Crimson Tide, led by Mccarron, averaged 38.7 points per game, and all 11 offensive starters in the season opener that year against Michigan would wound up on NFL rosters. So that's impressive. Also, Alabama rebounded from a home loss to number 15 Texas A&M in November to beat number 3 Georgia 32-28 in the SEC championship. Then destroyed number 1 Notre Dame in 42-14 in the title game. The Tide's strong defense was equally nasty that season as it held off 11 of its 14 opponents to 14 or fewer points. All right, number 6, 2011 Alabama. Alabama, of course, they had a lot of defenses throughout its storied history, but 2011 defense was first one in 26 years to lead the country in total defense, rushing defense, passing defense, and scoring defense. Crimson Tide held 12 of their 13 opponents to 14 points or fewer and smothered number 1 LSU 21-0 in the BCS National Championship. Shutout win over LSU in New Orleans avenged Alabama's only loss of the season, a 9-6 overtime setback to the Tigers at home in highly anticipated number 1 versus number 2 matchup. There were 14 Alabama defenders who played in that game who would go on to be selected in the NFL draft. Sophomore quarterback A.J. Mccarron wrestled the starting job from Philip Sims the first week of the season and wound up being named the offensive MVP in the title game after completing 23 of 34 passes for 234 yards against LSU defense that also was loaded with future NFL talent. Number 5, 2004 USC Trojans. This is a fan favorite, obviously, but you think it's the best team in conference history. It's certainly one of the primary teams in the discussion. Playing one of the toughest schedules in the country, the Trojans capped off an undefeated season with the most lopsided championship game ever, with a 55-19 against Oklahoma in the BCS era. Even though QB Matt Leinart, running back Reggie Bush, running back Lendale White debuted with a national title the year before, it was during this year when they became household names. Leinart won the Heisman, White led the team in rushing, and Bush was the most exciting player in the country. Officially, USC was stripped of the title and forced to vacate its final 2 wins of the season because of Bush's extra benefit scandal. But an asterisk doesn't have a memory-erasing powers. This was an all-time great team and should be remembered as such. Over the next 2 NFL drafts, USC had 16 players get selected. Number 4, 2013 Florida State Seminoles. I remember this team very well. The Seminoles would gladly take on 2001 Miami in a debate over the most talented team. Every starter on the 2013 Florida State squad, plus kicker Roberto Aguayo, landed on the NFL roster. Jameis Winston won the Heisman Trophy as a redshirt freshman, throwing for 3,820 yards and 38 touchdowns, with Rashad Green, Calvin Benjamin, Devontae Freeman, and Nick O'Leary among the skilled position talent. Defensively, LaMarcus Joyner, Telvin Smith, Tim Jernigan set the tone with a tenacious Florida State and is still trying to match. Florida State set an NCAA record for points scored in the season with 723. But what made this team so impressive beyond its talent was how easy it made everything look. Seminoles won its first 13 games by an average of 42.3 points per game. Nobody came within single digits until Auburn in the BCS National Championship game. Trailing in the fourth quarter for the first time all season, Winston threw the game-winning touchdown to Kelvin Benjamin with 13 seconds left to seal the undefeated season. Number 3, one of my favorites, 2001 Miami Hurricanes. It might be weird, but, I'm a Cali boy. My favorite football team is UCLA. I'm always a UCLA fan, but my dream school is always in Miami. The U, man. I don't know. I've always liked them. And, so 2001 Miami Hurricanes. You can make the argument for this team belongs number 1 for a lot of reasons. Starting with the biggest is sheer talent. The roster featured 38 future NFL draft picks, including 17 who went in the first round. Among the 22 starters in that 2002 Rose Bowl win over Nebraska that clinched the national title, 18 were drafted, 11 in the first round. The offense started with quarterback Ken Dorsey, but featured Clinton Portis, Andre Johnson, Jeremy Shockey. You know the names. Frank Gore and Willis Willis McGee were backups. The defense was even better with Ed Reed, Jonathan Vilma, Jerry McDougal, Mike Rumpf, DJ Williams, and Philip Buchanan leading the way. Miami averaged 42.7 points and gave it up an average of 9.8 points a game. And there's one knock, it's the schedule. Miami played in the Big East at the time, so its average opponent rank was not as good as 08 Florida and 05 Texas. The Hurricanes also had to survive scares late in the season against Boston College and Virginia Tech. And Nebraska was an inferior opponent in the championship game. That shouldn't detract from what this team accomplished. Alright, number 2, the 2008 Florida Gators. Urban Meyer has called his 2008 Gators the best ever played a game. He's obviously biased, but yeah, he has a good point. 19 players from that team were eventually drafted, and Tim Tebow ranks as amongst the most greatest quarterbacks in college football history. He helped lead the Gators offense to 611 points, the highest scoring total in SEC history, all while playing against 8 of the nation's top 30 defenses. But the offense went beyond him, with Percy Harvin, Chris Rainey, Jeff Demps, Luis Murphy, Aaron Hernandez, David Nelson. This team was virtually unstoppable, and the offense at least. But defensively, they had Carlos Dunlap, Brandon Spikes, Joe Hayden set the tone, giving Florida a nasty, aggressive edge. And then there's that promise speech Tebow made after an early season loss to Ole Miss. Yeah, this team from after that went on to play at a championship level. Tebow took over late in the win over Oklahoma at the Orange Bowl, and the Gators defense shut down the high-powered Sooners and Heisman winner Sam Bradford, holding them to 14 points and 360 total yards. Lastly, number 1, what they're saying is, according to ESPN.com, the best college football team of not all time, but the last 20 years is 2005 Texas Longhorns. Probably one of the most exciting championships ever in any game, in whatever sport. But 2005 Longhorns were the top championship team in the past 20 years, in large part because they claimed the best player in the past 20 years. Quarterback Vince Young remarkably didn't win the Heisman Trophy that season, but he produced one of the greatest individual seasons in recent college football history, culminating with one of the greatest individual game performances the sport has ever seen. In 2006 Rose Bowl, against heavily favored USC, Young completed 30 of 40 passes for 267 yards, rushed for 200 yards, and delivered the game-winning play, an 8-yard touchdown dash on 4th down with 19 seconds remaining. That play defined the BCS era and turned Vince Young into a legend. Young wasn't the only star for Texas, also boasted a top 10 defense. Michael Huff was a Jim Thorpe Award winner and, like Young, became a top 10 NFL draft pick. Linemen Jonathan Scott and Roderick Wright were consensus All-Americans as well. The 05 Longhorns never lost and saved their best for the biggest stage. So, that was the top 10 list. Video's kind of long, but I don't really like the stats and all that stuff. But, yeah. I just kind of disagree with this list, but it's ESPN.com. These guys are professionals. They do the stats. They do all that good stuff, the research. But so this is my top 10 college football teams of the last 20 years. So like, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and I'll see y'all next video.